Good morning, y'all. It's good to see you. Y'all doing all right? Good. And if I haven't had a chance to meet you yet, my name's Jake, and I'm so glad you're joining us this morning. Well, a quick question. Do we have any biography readers? Any avid biography readers here in the house? Oh, yeah, I see the hand, David. Yeah, for those of you, it's just a whole slew of them in this room. Now, for those of you who enjoy reading biographies, I'm sure you have noticed a pattern in them. And the pattern is this, that usually a biographer will focus most of the entire book on the person's life. That makes sense, right? I mean, chapter after chapter about their life, but just save a very small sliver about their death to the very end, right? That's the normal pattern. That makes sense. Which is one of the reasons why the gospel writer, the apostle John, that's why his biography on Jesus is interesting. It's one of the things that's really unique about it. Because see, the Apostle John, he actually gives about a third of his book to the last 24 hours of Jesus's life. And one of the things that he really zeroes in on in that 24 hours is just a series of trials of these times of Jesus appearing through in front of a number of different authorities, from the chief priests to Herod to Pilate, and he is being put on trial. John focuses in on that. Now, biblical scholars, they like to point out that one of the reasons that John probably focuses in on the trial of Jesus at the end of his life is because throughout John's gospel, he had actually been putting Jesus on trial. That throughout the gospel of John, John continues to put the question before us, who is Jesus? What's your verdict? Who do you believe that he is? Who do you think he is? And so John, even right from the very beginning, John chapter 1, he says, okay, Jesus is the light of the world who's come into the world to overcome darkness. But then he quickly says, but most people did not receive him as the light, begging the question, what about you? Who do you think he is? Is he the light? Is he not the light? And then that pattern continues, again, throughout the whole Gospel of John. Later in John chapter 1, it's Philip and Nathanael. And then John chapter 3, it's Nicodemus. John chapter 4, it's the Samaritan at the well. Again and again, scene after scene, John is causing his readers to ask the question, who do I think Jesus is? Who is Jesus? Is he the greatest man who ever lived? Is he more than a man? Is he God the Son? Is he the Lamb of God who takes away the sin of the world? Is he the Messiah? Or is he a liar? Is he a con artist? Is he a lunatic? Is he out to rob you of life instead of bring life? John pushes us to make a decision, to decide who is Jesus. And even to take it a step further, does it matter who he is? Like for your life and for my life, does his life have any implication on our lives? That we are put again and again with that question, what do we believe here about Jesus and why does it matter? Well, we're in the middle of a teaching series where we're looking at the 7 I am statements that Jesus made, where he himself tells us who he is, right? See, in the Gospel of John, there's these 7 statements where Jesus, he picks up the holy name of God, given in the Old Testament in Exodus, when God reveals himself to Moses in the whole burning bush, you remember that story? And God tells Moses his name, I am, or I am who I am. And in John, 7 different times, Jesus picks up that holy name, he applies it to himself, and then he adds a little color. He adds a little detail where he says things like, I am the bread of life, and I am the light of the world. Well, those are the 2 that we've covered so far in this series. And today we come to the 3rd I am statement found in John chapter 10, verse 7, when he says, I am the gate for the sheep. I am the gate for the sheep. And the question is that we should be asking every time that Jesus makes one of these I am statements is, do I actually believe that Jesus is who he says he is? Is he really the bread of life? Is he really the light of the world? Is he really the gate for the sheep? And what kind of implication does that have on my life? We are to ask those questions. And so this morning, we're going to ask that question. What does this mean about Jesus being the gate? And do we actually believe that it's true? Now, before we get into is it true, we do need to understand what he means. And I just be honest with you, I don't know if I'm allowed to say these things, but like out of all the 7 I am statements, this one just kind of hits me as like a little flat, right? I mean, just initially, right? Like, okay, I am the bread of life. Whoever comes to me will not be hungry. I was like, okay, I'm interested. Like, I don't know if I believe that, Jesus, but I'm at least going to listen to you, right? Because if that sounds interesting. Or, I am the light of the world. Whoever comes to me will not walk in darkness, but will walk in the light of life. Okay, I'm hooked. That'll preach. I'm listening. Tell me what you mean. But I am the gate for the sheep? Okay. Like I don't even know what are you talking about? That's at least how it would initially hit me. Perhaps that's how it hits you. So let's spend some time unpacking. Like, what does he actually mean here when he says he's the gate for the sheep? And in order for us to understand what he means, it's helpful for us to see why he says this in the first place. Because listen, Jesus wasn't just hanging out by the fire pit one night with his disciples, and they're just, talking about whatever they would talk about. And then the conversation kind of came to a lull, and he was like, hey, guys, I've been meaning to tell you, I'm the gate for the sheep. And like, all right. I'm sure they were used to Jesus saying things like that, but that's not how it happened. And neither was Jesus like walking along the path, and he saw a gate, and he's like, man, check out that gate. That's a good gate. That reminds me, I'm the gate. That's not what happened either. There was a very significant inciting incident that had taken place that causes Jesus to say this. And when we understand the incident, then we can better understand what he meant by it. So we need to look at the context. And to do that, though he makes this statement in John chapter 10, we have to go to John chapter 9. Okay, so John chapter 9, if you want to follow along in your old Bible, go for it. I'm going to kind of breeze through this story, but you can kind of read along. But in this story, in John chapter 9 picks up, verse 1, with Jesus and his disciples walking along the way. They see a man who was blind from birth. And Jesus, being Jesus, does what he does, and he heals this man. That he opens up his eyes. In fact, he tells them to go and wash in this pool, and then Jesus and his disciples move on, but he comes back and he can see, and now his neighbors notice that he can see, and they're filled with wonder, and as you can imagine, tons of questions, right? How is it that you can see? What took place? Who did this? And when he tells them, well, Jesus healed me. He opened up my eyes so I can see. They are like, okay, that's incredible. We should probably involve the religious leaders in this. They should know what has taken place. So they bring the formerly blind man to the religious leaders, to the Pharisees. And the Pharisees begin questioning this man about Jesus. And they have all kinds of questions because when they begin asking him about Jesus, they find out that Jesus had healed him on the Sabbath, which was breaking God's law. And so in their minds, they're like, the Pharisees' mind, like, this is not okay. That that Jesus would heal you on Sabbath. That must mean that Jesus is not a man of God, that he's a sinner. And so actually the Pharisees are divided about Jesus. In fact, let me read a verse for you. John chapter 9, verse 16 says, some of the Pharisees said, this man cannot be from God because he does not keep the Sabbath. But others asked, how can a sinner perform such signs? And so they're divided. And what are they divided over? The question, who is Jesus? See, again, John is putting Jesus on trial. Or in this case, the Pharisees are putting Jesus on trial. Who is Jesus? Is he a sinner, a rule breaker, Sabbath breaker, or is he a healer, or even more? Who is Jesus? He's on trial. So what do you do when you put someone on trial? Well, you start calling more witnesses, right, to testify. And that's what they do. Specifically, they call the formerly blind man's parents to the proverbial stand. And they ask them to testify. And so in verse 20, or right before verse 20, they ask the parents two, I think, very easy questions. Is this really your son? And was he really born blind? I think that they probably felt good about those answers. Like, yeah, I think that's an easy answer. In fact, verse 20 says, we know he is our son, the parents answered, and we know he was born blind. Yes to both. But then look, they say, but how he can see now, or who opened his eyes, we don't know. Ask him, he's of age, he will speak for himself. And then we're given this little insightful commentary. His parents said this because they were afraid of the Jewish leaders who already had decided that anyone who acknowledged that Jesus was the Messiah would be put out of the synagogue. That's why his parents said, he is of age, ask him. So put another way, his parents, they don't come to defend the son or to say, yes, his testimony is true about Jesus. Instead, they kind of distance themselves from their son. And why? Because they're afraid of the Pharisees, the Jewish leaders. They're afraid that they're going to be put out, shut out of the synagogue, ostracized from their people and the worship of God. So they say, no, he's of age. Go ask him. Don't involve us in this. We want to be distanced from this. So that's what the Pharisees do. In verse 24, we're told, a second time, they, the Pharisees, summoned the man who had been blind. Give glory to God by telling the truth, they said. We know this man was a sinner, he replied. Whether he is a sinner or not, I don't know. One thing I do know, I was blind, but now I see. That's a pretty powerful testimony, isn't it? And you would think that these Pharisees, these religious leaders would hear that and they would be like, oh man, that's good. We should write a song about that. That's like the amazing grace of God. That's not what they do. Why? They're hell-bent in proving that Jesus is a liar, a sinner, Sabbath rule breaker. And so they say to him, what did he do to you? How did he open your eyes? And he answered, I have told you already, you did not listen. Why do you want to hear it again? Do you want to become his disciples too? And as you can imagine, that last line doesn't go over real well with the Pharisees. They aren't interested in becoming Jesus' disciples. And so when they realize that this man's not going to recant his story and that he's not going to condemn Jesus as a sinner like they want him to, they have this to say to the man. You were steeped in sin at birth. How dare you lecture us? And they threw him out. And they threw him out. Now, real quick, can you imagine being this guy? Like, this was the best day of his life. He's born blind. And all of a sudden, Jesus enters into his life, and now he can see. I mean, this is incredible. And it's not even the fact that he can see, though that's a really big deal for sure. But even bigger than that, in that day and age, to be blind was not just a physical disability, but it was a social stigma. See, to be blind was seen, or to have really any disability, be born with any disability at that time, was to be believed to have been cursed by God. And because they believed that he was cursed by God, he was an outcast, that he was shunned, that he was held at a distance, that either people judged him and covered him with shame because they believed that either he had sinned or his parents had sinned or there was some kind of generational sin, but whatever it was, he was getting what he deserved and we should have nothing to do with him. See, this man had suffered his entire life. He had suffered physically, he'd suffered socially, he'd suffered spiritually. I mean, good chances are that he has never had any interaction with a Pharisee or a religious leader ever until this day, when they're questioning him about the one who healed him, instead of celebrating with him over his healing. This man has suffered. He has been wounded. He has been hurt and scarred, thrown out as an outcast. And yet here, he could see, and the stigma's gone, or he would think it was, and he goes to the Pharisees expecting celebration. And instead, what do? They throw him out again. You're thrown out. Door slammed. I mean, you were steeped in sin at birth. And they throw him out. They shut the door. They slam the gate. Or so they think. Until Jesus shows up again. Verse 35. Jesus heard that they had thrown him out. That phrase, throw him out, it shows up a bunch here. You catching that? Parents don't want to be thrown out. He is thrown out. Jesus hears he's thrown out. When Jesus had heard that he is thrown out, what does he do? He goes and finds him. He goes and finds him. He seeks this man out. And when he found him, he said, "Do you believe in the Son of Man?" Jesus' go-to statement about who he is. People would have understood at this time that he was referring to himself. He says, "Who is he, sir?" Because remember, when Jesus first interacted with this guy, he couldn't see. So he doesn't know. Like, who is the Son of Man? Tell me so that I may believe in him. And Jesus said, "You have now seen him. In fact, he is the one speaking with you." And the man said, "Lord, I believe." And he worshiped him. Who is Jesus? This man comes to believe that he is the Lord, and he worships him. See, Jesus seeks this man out, and he invites him in to trust in him. And in doing so, he welcomes this outcast in. The outcast who has been covered in shame and judged by others his entire life. He sought out and invited in by Jesus. I am the gate. We're told at the end of chapter 9 that some Pharisees were present when Jesus found the man and when Jesus had this last conversation with him. And so in John chapter 10, Jesus turns from talking to this man and he addresses the Pharisees that are present there. And he does so in a very Jesus kind of way, all right? He uses a metaphor, a sheep pen and shepherds and sheep and robbers and thieves, and to convey something that like this whole big point of how they have related to this man compared to how he has related to this man. And here's what he says. Let me just read it. John chapter 10, starting in verse 1, he says, "Very truly I tell you, Pharisees, anyone who does not enter the sheep pen by the gate, but climbs in by some other way, is a thief and a robber. The one who enters by the gate is the shepherd of the sheep. The gatekeeper opens the gate for him, and the sheep listen to his voice, and he calls his own sheep by name, and he leads them out. And when he has brought out his own, he goes on ahead of them, and the sheep follow him because they know his voice, but they will never follow a stranger. In fact, they will run away from him because they do not recognize a stranger's voice." And then Jesus stops talking. And all the Pharisees are like, What? Did you get that? Are you following what he's talking about? What is he talking about? In fact, verse 6 says this. Jesus used this figure of speech, but the Pharisees did not understand what he was telling them, right? And now listen, they didn't understand what he was telling them, not because this imagery was new to them. I mean, they were very familiar with all of this shepherding stuff, right? And so they knew what a sheep pen was. In fact, I got a picture of a kind of ancient Hebrew sheep pen, what it probably looked like. A sheep pen were out and built out into the wilderness as a way for shepherds to be able to protect the sheep, specifically most of the times at night from predators. Because we think about the wilderness, we think, oh man, that'd be so nice to get out in the mountains and the wilderness. It's just nice rolling hills or beautiful scenery. And it's like, no, the wilderness is dangerous. Wilderness is where there were predators, right? The wilderness is where there were cliffs that if you don't put the sheep in the sheep pen, they'll wander off and fall off a cliff because sheep are dumb. Or they will be attacked by wolves, or at that time, lions and tigers and bears. Oh my. So, there were predators that would come after the sheep. And so they would put them in a sheep pen like this. And you see that opening, thought. And I think there is historical evidence. I don't know how often this is the case, but I think it was a decent amount of time that the shepherd himself would lay himself down across the opening, serving as the gate to the sheep pen to keep the predators out and to keep the sheep safe, right? That is the imagery that Jesus is using here. But the Pharisees, they're not following. And so Jesus clarifies. And he doesn't as much like go back into what he just said and explain everything. He just kind of takes some of the key ideas that he had just brought up and he expands on them, beginning with the very first thing that he had mentioned, which is the gate, the sheep pen and the gate. And so here's what he says. Beginning in verse 7. Therefore, Jesus said again, and here's our line. Very truly I tell you, I am the gate for the sheep. All who come before me are thieves and robbers, but the sheep have not listened to them. I am the gate. Whoever enters through me will be saved. And they will come in and they will go out and find pasture. The thief comes only to steal and kill and destroy. But I have come that they may have life and have it to the full. Now, with all of that as context, what do you think Jesus means when he says, I am the gate for the sheep? I would put it this way. What he means is, I'm the one that provides entry into life to the full. I provide entry into life to the full. And I provide protection from thieves and robbers, those that are out to kill, steal, and destroy. Now let me take those one at a time, okay? First, he provides entry into life to the full. See, when Jesus says to the Pharisees, I am the gate, he was also at the same time saying to them, you're not the gate. You're not the gatekeepers. You're not the ones who get to decide who's in and who's out. You don't get to look at someone and because they were blind from birth or because they don't measure up to whatever standards that you have and determine that they're an outcast and you keep them out of my sheep pen. That is not your role. How dare you? What did you say to that man? You were steeped in sin from birth and you throw him out? No, that you are not the gate. I am the gate. And I say, whoever enters through me will be saved. That word, whoever, is key. See, Jesus is saying that I'm the gate, and here's how I operate. Anyone who comes to me, anyone, no matter their past, no matter what sin they have done or how they have been sinned against, no matter what shame they carry, no matter what stigma that might be associated with their name, no matter what they haven't done or have done, no matter what, whoever comes to me, enters through me, will be saved. Now, the Pharisees, they needed to hear that because they thought they were the gatekeepers. But friends, what's funny, I was talking to Chris about this earlier this morning, is like I think that is awesome, and we're going to come back to that theme in a minute. But I wonder if we really need to hear that. See, we look at the Pharisees, and we also say with Jesus, how dare them try to keep anyone out? But in our culture, the common thought is that we also try to play gatekeeper. But in our thought, and our common thinking is there actually aren't any gates. Everybody comes. Everybody's saved. Or perhaps the only thing we need to be saved from is the idea that we need to be saved, right? And so we don't even need to talk about this. Everyone's good. Everyone's good with God. And I think to us, Jesus would say the same thing. Nuh-uh. I'm the gate. You're not the gate. You don't decide. See, I'm the way. I'm the way through. I'm the way to enter into life. And it's not I'm a gate, it's I'm the gate. Now listen, that's an exclusive statement. And that rubs us wrong. I know, I feel it too. I live in this world. I know how against the cultural ties that is, but that's what he's saying. But also at the same time, what rubbed the Pharisees wrong is that he was saying this exclusive statement, but he was saying that it in the most inclusive way possible. It's the most inclusive of all exclusive statements. Everyone is welcome. You don't have to keep the 7 pillars of Islam. You don't have to follow the 8-fold path of Buddhism to reach nirvana. You don't have to keep the 10 commandments. You don't have to do all the things to prove that you're good enough, that you've done enough, that you're acceptable. Listen, what Jesus is saying, and it's unique, it's different than how the world operates and how all religions operate. Jesus is saying, you do not have to be acceptable to be accepted. Whoever comes through me, enters through me, will be saved, will enter into life. Now, when he uses this word saved, it could also be translated will be healed. See, in the Greek, the word for saved and the word for healed is sozo, and it can be translated either way because salvation is healing. And that is what Jesus is all about. See, Jesus is all about healing us on a soul deep level, to restoring us, healing our wounds, covering our shame, paying for our sin. Just like he had done with this blind man, who he had just healed. From both his blindness, but also by seeking him out, welcoming him in, beginning to heal him of his social standing shame, his ostracization. This is what Jesus does. He heals, and he says, if anyone who comes to me, I'm the gate. Anyone who comes through me, enters through me, will be saved, will be healed. And then he describes this sense of saving, this sense of salvation, of healing in this way. He says that healing is providing salvation or health to the sheep, which he defines here as free access to pasture and the fullness of life. Free access to pasture and the fullness of life. They will come in and go out and find pasture. The thief comes only to steal and kill and destroy. I have come that they may have life and have it to the full. Friends, life to the full. What a beautiful statement. See, that's what Jesus provides entry into. And most of the time, John refers to this as eternal life in his biography of Jesus. And when he talks about eternal life, he means not just a quantity of life extending forever, but a quality of life. Many of y'all have heard that, right? This is Zoe life. It's not the physical life, it's life. It's life, abundant life. In fact, it's the life of God himself. It is the life that we were intended to enjoy and be connected with and be united with from the very beginning. Life that is sourced in the life and the love of our triune God. It's life that comes from union with God through Jesus and results in us being able to experience the love of God and the peace of God and the protection of God and the healing from God and on, which enables us to go through this life. Not with all of the material blessings that we want. That's not what he's talking about when he says life to the full. No, what his life enables us to do is to go through this life with complete assurance and confidence in God's loving care and control, even when you have troubles and hardships, because it's his life, because it's life that flows from the fountain of life instead of from our circumstances. It's life never ceasing from the God who is love, pouring it out on us. I have come that you may have life and have it to the full. And friends, whether you realize it or not, that is a life that you and I deeply long to experience, for it is a life that we were created for, that we were created to enjoy forever. Jesus says, this is why I've come, and all who enter through me will find it, life, and life to the full. That's the first thing that Jesus means when he says he's the gate. He's the one who provides entry into life to the full. And the second thing that he is saying here is that he provides protection from thieves and robbers. Now, who are the thieves and robbers according to Jesus? Well, he told us in the first verse of chapter 10. Let me read it again. He says, very truly I tell you, Pharisees, anyone who does not enter the sheep pen by the gate, but climbs in some other way, is a thief and a robber. And then in verse 8, he adds, all who come before me are thieves and robbers. Now, I think it's safe to say that these comments would have upset the Pharisees, because they would have understood that Jesus was saying, not only are y'all not the gate, but you're the thieves and robbers. That you're the ones who are wounding the sheep. You're the one who are ensnaring and entrapping the sheep. You're the one that's doing the harm, killing and stealing and destroying. You are the thieves. You are the robbers. See, in the immediate context, that's what Jesus was saying about the Pharisees. They're the thieves and robbers. But just to take a wider view on this, also recognize that according to Jesus, thieves and robbers are anyone who does not enter by the gate or through him, but climbs into the sheep pen in any other way to hurt and ensnare his sheep. Meaning his people, or those who have entered into life through him and who belong to him. And so anyone who comes with a message other than Christ that offers life, that says that they have what you're looking for, salvation and healing, or anyone that is trying to remove you from Christ, to make you feel their pull to distance you from Jesus, all of these are, according to Jesus, signs that that's a thief and that's a robber. And guys, not to sound alarmist, but even though Pharisees aren't common here in our everyday, thieves and robbers absolutely are. There are a ton of thieves and robbers all around us, and we need protection from them. See, here's what thieves and robbers do. Here's their main way of attack. I'll sum it up in two ways. First, the first attack is this. They try to get you to believe that you're not good enough for Jesus, This is the religious attack, if you will. This is the message of the Pharisees to the blind man in John chapter 9. This is, hey, you are guilty and shamed, and get out. We have nothing to do with you. God would have nothing to do with you. That's the first lie. That's the first way thieves and robbers try to distance you from God. But the second one is this. They try to get you to believe that Jesus is not good enough for you. That Jesus is not good enough for you. See, this lie goes all the way back to the serpent in the garden in Genesis 3. It's the lie that says God is holding out on you. That his way does not lead to life and life to the full. No, he can't be trusted. He is not the way to the good life. He is out to keep you from the good life. He's holding back on you. So walk away from him. Go your own way. Do your own thing. Life, salvation, whatever that is, healing, it all is found outside of him. Because that's the message of thieves and robbers. That's the message of the enemy. Now listen, the idea that you're not good enough for Jesus is easy to believe when you're sinning. And you're aware of your guilt, and you think, I got to do good things to get back into God's good standing. That's a lie, but it's a lie that's easy to believe. And the lie that Jesus is not good enough for you, and that's an easy lie to believe as well. Friends, that's why we need a gate. That's why we need protection. That's why we need Jesus. We need someone who will protect us from these lies that lead us away to steal life from us, to kill us, and to destroy us. We need one who will keep us close and hold on to us, that we would have life and life to the full in him. We need a gate. We need Jesus. See, Jesus protects us from the thieves and the robbers. You know how? Well, he protects us from the first lie of thieves and robbers with one word, and it is the word whoever. To come back to that, whoever enters through me will be saved. It has nothing to do with you and your standard and what you've done to clean yourself up on. And if you've been away from that one sin for long enough and you've beaten yourself up enough about it, it does not factor in at all. It doesn't have anything to do with you, because your acceptance in Christ is all based on what he has done for you. So he can say whoever. And you can apply that to whenever. You can come to him. Don't buy into the lie that you're not good enough. And really, the lie is, you being good enough has anything to do with this at all. He's good enough. So you can come to him at any time because of what he's done for you and find life in him. That's the first way that he protects us from that lie. It's that one word, whoever. Man, say that to yourself. Second way that he protects us from the thieves and the robbers, the lie that he's not good enough, is through his death. It's through his death. Is Jesus good enough to trust, to follow? Can we take him at his word when he says that he is the way into life and life to the full? Friends, what greater proof of his goodness is there than that he would be willing to die a robber's death on our behalf? See, at the beginning of the sermon, I mentioned that John gave a lot of attention to Jesus' trials at the end of his book. And one of the details he included is that after Pilate had interrogated Jesus, Pilate addresses the crowd of people that had gathered, and he announces to them, John chapter 18, I find no guilt in him, speaking about Jesus. But you have a custom that I should release one man for you at the Passover. So do you want me to release to you the king of the Jews?" And they cried out again, "Not this man, but Barabbas." And then we're given this one-line description of who Barabbas is. Now, Barabbas was a robber. So the people trade Jesus for a robber. And Jesus is sentenced to die a robber's death. Now, why would he do that? Because he's good, friends. Because he's good. So good that he would willingly lay down his life for you so that through him, the gate, we may have life and life to the full, that we may have his life. See, Jesus' death on our behalf absolutely refutes the second lie of the thieves and the robbers that come to steal, kill, and destroy. And it is Jesus' death on our behalf that is the reason why he is the gate that we can enter in order to be saved and have life and life to the full. And so, to close this message, let's remember his death on our behalf by taking communion together. And servers, you can begin passing out the elements. And friends, as they pass out these elements, I have one big question for you. And that question is, who do you think Jesus is? Who do you think Jesus is? See, the Pharisees thought he was a liar, a sinner, and a robber. But this formerly blind man, when he was asked, he said, "Here's the one thing I know. I was blind, but now I see." See, who do you think he is? Is Jesus a liar? Is he a thief or a robber? Is he out to steal life from you, to keep you from the good life? Or is he the gate, the way to salvation and to healing and a life to the full? Who do you think he is? And here's my encouragement to you as you answer that question, as we get ready to take communion. That is, please factor in the cross when you're trying to come up with your answer. See, the cross declares that we can trust him. The cross shouts, he is who he says he is. Why would he die for you and then at the same time lie to you about who he is? If he would die to bring you life, why would he withhold the good life from you? See, the cross declares his love, his goodness, and his trustworthiness. His death on the cross is why you and me and why whoever else may come can enter into his salvation, his healing and life. Who is Jesus? Factor in the cross, friends.